How much are your friendships worth? Wait, don't answer, I already know. They're worth $97,265 a year. That is to say, if you stop seeing your friends or family more than once a month, you would have to earn, on average, $97,265 more per year to be as happy as you are right now. Marriages are worth a little more, about $105,000. That is until they die and you lose the emotional equivalent of $308,000. If what I'm doing sounds weird and maybe the littlest bit evil, then buckle up because today we're going to be exploring the fun and questionable world of happiness economics. That's right, if you've ever wondered how much happiness money can buy, economists have figured it out. And the answer is, well, a little complicated. So the first and most obvious question is, how do economists even quantify happiness? If you ask the question, can money buy X, economists will tell you, yes, money can buy X. How do you not know that money can buy X? But happiness isn't X. It's a lot more abstract than X. So how do you turn it into a number? Well, there are two main ways to mathematically measure happiness. On a microeconometric scale, the happiness of individuals, and on a macroeconometric scale, the happiness of a population. Measuring happiness on a macro scale is a practice that's pretty well established. Bhutan's government, for example, got so into happiness economics that they developed the Gross National Happiness Index and then literally wrote it into their constitution as the guiding principle of their entire country. To measure their country's happiness, they survey about 10% of their population using 33 indicators grouped into 9 domains. Each of these indicators has a particular cutoff. So, for example, sleeping at least 8 hours per day satisfies the sleep sufficiency indicator. Everyone surveyed is grouped into one of 4 happiness levels based on how many of the 9 domains they fulfilled, and from there, the government uses this to calculate a happiness index for their population, a number that falls somewhere between 0 and 1 and usually hovers around 0.75. That's only like a C+, which doesn't seem great, but as my old high school guidance counselor liked to say, if you want to get a good GPA, you have to stop doing ethnic cleansings. So a statistical index like GNH is a decent way of gauging the overall happiness of a society, but what about when we're talking about individual people? Well, in that case, the only real way of measuring a person's happiness is, and get out your notebooks here, to ask them how happy they feel. If we're trying to measure how something objective like money affects something subjective like individual happiness, all that really matters is whether that person thinks that they're happy. So for microeconometric studies, economists will survey people with simple questions like, how do you feel right now? Or how satisfied are you with your life? Take a self-reported score on some sort of scale, and boom, we've put a number on happiness. Now that we've got our happiness number, how do we use it to answer our question? Well, the first thing that we do is plug it into a formula that would look something like this. When I showed this equation to my writer Ben, he started crying and sweating a lot, and then he went and read like half an economics book, and then he took a really long nap, and now he's ready to explain it to those of you who went to college to get a degree in something called literary arts. This right here represents the individual's own reported assessment of how happy they are, their happiness number. This is a vector, basically a list of variables, that accounts for the individual's measurable characteristics like marital status, education level, and income. And because humans are messy, unpredictable columns of meat, this is an error term, something to account for everything that can't be measured like personality, past experiences, or whether they're subscribed to one of those subreddits that's just like videos of people dying. So if the numbers don't line up in the rest of the equation, this tells you how much those immeasurable factors are at play. Using this formula and a large enough data set, you can answer our question of exactly how much happiness money can buy. You just change the income variable here, keep everything else the same, and see how much the happiness number changes over here. So without further ado, can money buy happiness? Well, I sure hope you weren't expecting a one-word answer yet, because we still have like 2 minutes of video to go. One of the most popular and commonly cited studies on this equation is this one, done in 2010. If you're an underpaid freelance journalist who's been given approximately 30 seconds to write an article on this topic, this is the study you're going to want to use to get those sweet, sweet clicks. Using 3 measures of self-reported emotional well-being, the study pretty confidently concludes that money does indeed buy happiness, but only up to about $75,000 a year. In other words, Jeff Bezos isn't any happier than your average dental hygienist, but your average dental hygienist is way happier than your average half-as-interesting intern. So there's your answer. Right? Well, nope, because about a decade later, an almost identical study was conducted and found that nope, you just keep getting happier. Jeff Bezos is full of glee and devoid of hair like a scary, muscular Kirby. So what's the answer then? Well, the answer is that both of these studies did a bad job of analyzing their data, and there's a way to prove it. If you look at the first study, the data gets pretty bunched up near the top. The average positive effect for rich people is about 89%, which means that most of them were just maxing out their happiness surveys across the board so they could get back to evading taxes or whatever it is that rich people do for fun. But just because most rich people reported being maximally happy doesn't mean that they are all equally happy. It just means that this study didn't have a way of stratifying happy people. This is what's called a ceiling effect in statistics, and if Ben can understand that, then the people who wrote this study really don't have any excuse. But just because this first study was screwy doesn't mean that there isn't any flattening effect, because if you take the second study and only look at the most miserable people, then the flattening effect comes back. In other words, happy people will continue getting happier the more money you throw at them, but unhappy people can only be cheered up to a certain point, somewhere around $110,000. The point is, money is wasted on the terminally unhappy, so if your employee's dog just died, make sure to not give them a raise. It's just science. Okay, so today's video was pretty technical, and a crucial part of it was data analysis. Data analysis is a super powerful tool to be able to interpret huge swaths of data and turn it into confident conclusions. The way I learned this subject was through the course by our sponsor, Brilliant. It was an amazingly straightforward and intuitive way of familiarizing myself with some of math's trickiest fundamentals, as it broke the big subjects down into small bite-sized chunks that I could tackle in just 10 or 15 minutes, and taught those small components through straightforward explanations and interactive exercises. Then eventually brought all those smaller parts together and built them back up into the bigger subject, so even with just small spurts of learning, suddenly I understood this massive subject. I really think Brilliant is the best way to learn these STEM subjects, especially since being able to access them on any of my devices whenever I want means I can learn these concepts on the go. If I have a 20-minute subway ride, I can come out the other end having made meaningful progress towards understanding gravitational physics, for example. And best of all, you can get started for free right now. By using my link, brilliant.org/HAI, you can try Brilliant for free for a full 30 days, and the first 200 of you to sign up will also get 20% off their annual subscription.